Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 16 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're knowing where you're going with our Ultimate GPS Tracker project. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee, poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, I want to go ahead and tell you what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to teach you is how to master data logging on a Raspberry Pi Pico W by writing to the Raspberry Pi Pico W flash and reading from that same flash memory. And so for our interest, as far as this class goes, many of you guys have seen that we have our GPS working, where we have our little display working, that we can display where we are at any given time, but you can kind of see where we're going. If we're going to have a tracker, we're going to have to log the data. So what we're doing is we're doing this for the GPS tracker project, but there's many different projects where you might want to log data. You might want to log pressure, humidity, and temperature. Or you might want to log data coming from an ultrasonic distance sensor. There's all types of sensors that you might want to log the data. And so I'm going to teach you how to master that today and how to understand the ins and outs of creating a log file and then reading back from it. So if you're not doing the GPS project, that's okay, because this is very broadly applicable. Now today we're not going to actually be working with the GPS. We're just going to show you how to create and interact with the log files. Sound good? Okay, well, let me get out of your way. Let me have another little sip of my Go Juice here. And then let's go ahead and call up Thani. And you should have your Raspberry Pi Pico W connected. Make sure in the lower right corner that you've selected the Pi Pico so that you're talking to it and not writing just a Python program on your desktop. And let's get ready to write some code. Now, we're not going to be interacting with the sensor today, and so we're just going to hardwire in some sensor data. So I'm going to say sensor data, and that's going to be equal to the string 2025.5 and then comma 26 comma 26.0, let's say, and then comma, let's go 24.8. So this could be measurements from 3 different sensors. If you were actually getting the data from the sensor, you would have 3 numbers. You would convert those 3 numbers to strings, and then you would concatenate those 3 strings together into one string to get what we're showing here. Okay, so that has got us a little data to work with. Now what we want to do is we want to send that data to the flash memory. So what we need to do is we're going to say with open, and now what do we put in? We put in the actual file name that we want to write the data to. And this is going to be a file on the Raspberry Pi Pico W. Now, if you don't put a path, it will put the file in the same folder that the program is in. Or you could put a path to the folder that you wanted to write the data to. So if you didn't want to mix the data in with your programs, you could create a data folder, and then you could say like /data/ the file name here. But we're just going to create a file in the same folder. I'm going to call it log.txt. You can call yours whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to do. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a W in single quotes there. And what does that mean? I am opening the log.txt file to work with it, and I am going to write to it. So you can open it in different ways. If you're going to write, you open it as a write with write. If you're going to read it, you open it with read. And there's a couple of other things that we'll work with. And then you've got to give it an object name that you're going to interact with. So I am going to call my object file. File is not a special word. You can call yours whatever you want. But now file is the object that we interact with, and file is tied to the actual physical file log.txt. Okay, we're going to put Mr. Colon there, and now we are going to write the data file, our object, which is tied to log.txt, and then we are going to say write. We're going to write it, and then what are we going to write? Sensor data like that. Okay, look good? Yep, that looks good. So now that should be in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to now just say print. We're going to print, and what are we going to print? We are going to print data written to log. I think I put an extra space in there. Log.txt. Close it, close it. Now let's go ahead over here and let's view our files. Okay, and on the Raspberry Pi Pico W here, you come down and you see these log programs or programs, Python programs that we've written, but there's no data file in there called log.txt. So now let's run this thing, and what does it say? Data written to log.txt. So now I think I need to reload this, and what we should hopefully see if we reload this, refresh. Okay, there it is, boom, log.txt. Now, I just showed you something that's kind of important because you can really get hung up on this. You notice that this didn't show up when I did this. It didn't show up when I did this, and you've got to reload it, or you're sitting there thinking your program doesn't work. You have to come over here and you have to say refresh, and then it'll show it to you. Now, we can actually click on this, and if we do, boom, what do I have? I have one line of text. It is a string, and it has those 3 numbers in it that we just wrote. Okay, so that is pretty good. We want to close this because I don't know if you can write or read from it if it's open, so it's always good to close it before you keep going. So now we know that we can write to the flash memory. Great success. But if you want to write, what else do you want to do? Well, you want to be able to read it. So I'm going to say with open again. What do I want to open? I want to open log.txt, and I want to open it as a W. No, I want to read this time. So I'm going to put an R there, and then we're going to close it, and then we're going to go like this. And then, what was that? With open log.txt. Man, this has got me. I didn't close that. Okay, so now that looks good. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'll just call it the content, and the content is going to be equal to file, the object that is associated, and I didn't put in as file up here. Okay, as file. You guys probably saw that. So we're going to open file, which is the object file, which is associated with the file log.txt. So we're going to file.what? File.read, and then it will read that line, and it will put it in the variable. It will put it in the variable content. Okay, and now what I can do is I can come in here and I can just say print. And what am I going to print? I'm going to print content like that. Okay, so let's see if this will run. And so we are going to run this thing, and data written to log, and then what is the data? 25.5, 26.0, and 24.8. But the thing you have to see is this is a string that has 3 interesting and useful numbers in it. But how would we get that string? You guys, I'm sure, know how to do this. And then I'm just going to print again this time. What I'm going to say here is raw. I'm going to call this, I'm going to put a label on it. Raw data like that, and then comma, and then content. And you got to use either the single or the double, but don't mix them. Okay, like that, comma, content. Okay, so the raw data content. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to now take that, and I'm going to say the values is going to be an array, and values is equal to content.split. And what do I want to split it on? I want to split it on the comma. Okay, so now it's going to take that number, comma, number, comma, number. It's going to split it on the comma. It's going to create an array that has 3 values in it. Okay, now what do I want to do? I want to say parsed. I better do it. Parsed data like that. Okay, and now I will close that, then I'll put a comma, and now I want to print the array values like that. Okay, now let's see if there's anything else we want to do. And again, the opening and the closing of the file is occurring with the with open. That sort of goes in and takes care of a lot of that for you. So don't worry, you don't need to go in and close those files. That with open will take care of that for you. Okay, so let's come in now and let's run this thing and look at that. Boom. Data written to log.txt, that's good. Raw data, it printed out one long string, and then the parse data is the array. Now it should still have those, so like I could say values of 0, and then values of 0, maybe it doesn't, yeah, values of 0, 25.5, and I could say values of 1, and then we got 26. Okay, but what I want you to see is this was a string, and then we split it into 3 strings, but what you have to see is those are strings. And so if you wanted a number, what you could do is you could come in and you could say float values of 1, like that. And now if I do that, boom, I've got 26.0 the number instead of 26.0 the string. Okay, so that is pretty important. So what have we done in our short time together today? You can write something and you can read something. But now what if you wanted to write more data, right? You're going to want to save more than just one line. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to now, we've been able to write one line, but what you know is that you really want to write multiple lines. And so I'm going to show you how to kind of do multiple lines. And so this time what I'm going to do, instead of creating a string, and this will also show you how you can just create a string instead of, or you know, the way I'd done it that time was I just created one string of concatenated values. But what if we started with an array? And so what is in that array? What is in that array is going to be those string values. And so it's going to be, I'll make a string out of that number. You'll read it as a float, you'll convert it to a string, and then you will put it in the array as a string. And that'll allow us to concatenate and do other things that we're going to do. Now, when you read it, then you'll convert it back to a float. So now I have an array sensor data. I'm going to call that sensor data 1. Okay, and it is an array of 3 numbers. Now I'm going to take that because we want to learn how to deal with arrays, and then we also want to learn how to write multiple lines. And so we'll call this data 2. In reality, this is going to come from your sensors, but I'm just making up the data because I don't want to slow us up with having to make sensors. So let's change these up a little bit. Okay, let's make this 29.4. Let's make this 13.6. I want to kind of make them look different so we can see if it's really working or not. Let's call this 7.6. Let's call this 137. Yeah, 237. It doesn't matter. Just make all these numbers different just so that we can look at it and see if it's working. Okay, we'll call this 223.5, like that. So now I have 3 data arrays, okay? And what I want to do is I want to write those 3 data arrays one line at a time. So here we are still going to open log text, but if I'm going to write them, I need to put all of these into an array, and then I'll step through the array to do my writing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say all data is going to be equal to the array sensor data 1, comma, sensor data 2, comma, sensor data 3, like that. Okay, like that. All right, yeah, you can see me. I want to make sure that I'm not in your way. All right, so now I have all data. Now I am still going to open the file log.txt is W, and it's going to be associated with the object file. Now I'll say this time I don't need to go in and erase this, because when I open this as a W, it clears the old data and it starts writing back at line 1. Okay, now what do I want to do? I need to step through that. So I'm going to say for data, the individual array, it's going to be an individual array in all data. Okay, so the first time through the loop, what is data? Data is this array. The second time through the loop, data is this. I did it wrong. It's this one, which is this one. And then the third time through the loop, it's this one, which is this one. And so now data is going to be one array, and it's going to be the next array each time through the loop, if that makes sense. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. We're going to step through all data, and we're going to put the individual ones each time in late data. Now, what I need to do is I need to say that a line, I'm just creating a new variable, is going to be equal to, I'm going to join at the comma dot join and reading set. Now, why do I want this? I don't want a string. You see, I've got to make this something that is writable. Okay, I need to make it something that is writable. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this array. It's kind of the opposite of split. I'm going to join this array into one string that is going to concatenate at the comma. So I'm going to join at the comma all of these values into one string. Okay, now let's now that we have the line, let's just look at this. So I'm going to say print the data just so we see what it looks like, and then I'm going to print the line that was created, and you'll see how that they're different. Okay, and then this then is going to come out here like that because we want it in the loop. And then file.write. What do I want to write? I want to write not data, because that is that complicated array that's going to be hard to parse. I want to turn that into a string, and so it is the string line. So I want to do line, and then I don't want the lines to be going across. I want every time to go to a new line, and so I need to concatenate that with the next line. The next line command. And so this next line command would be kind of like entering, hitting enter on your keyboard. It's going to write the line, and then it's going to go to the new line, if that makes sense. Okay, so I file.write line concatenated with the carriage return, or the new line. That's actually new line, not carriage return. Okay, so now let's run this thing and see what happens. I think that we need to comment this stuff out, because it's not going to be the right thing. So I'm going to comment it out. I just want to see if we're writing the data before we do the read. Line 6, what is that? For data, for data in all data. So data in all data will step through all data, and it will do one of these at a time. Okay, so now let's run this thing. Line 7 already. Line is equal to, man, that was data like that. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so now we're going to print data and line, and so now let's look at this. All right, so you see the data is like this, and if we save that, that would be a very complicated string to parse when we read it in. So we got rid of the parentheses by joining it the comma, and now what we have is we just have a string. And I think, like, if I look at line now, if I just look at line, yeah, you see that it is a string. It is a string. It's the last one because it stepped through the for loop. Okay, so now we have written the data. Now let's see if we can read it in. So I'm going to uncomment that, because probably some of that I'll be able to use. Okay, so now how do you read one line at a time? Well, with open, we are going to log.txt file, comma, open it as read, and then associate that physical file with the object file. And now again, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to read it in one line at a time. So I'm going to say for line, and that's just going to be our variable that we're reading into for line in what this time? In file. So I want to step through every single line of file, which is every single line of log.txt. And so we're going to do that for line in file. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that values is equal to that line that that line that I'm reading in, and then I'm going to strip all the nonsense off of it, like the carriage returns or white spaces or whatever. It's going to clean up after the read, and then I'm going to dot split at the comma. Just like we joined at the comma, this time we are going to split at the comma. All right, and so now we have that. So I didn't, okay, value is for line in file. Yeah, so this is going to read it, okay, and then the values is going to be line dot strip dot split, okay. So I'm stepping through the file one line at a time, and each line is going to go into values one at a time. And so now I'm going to print, and I'm going to print sensor readings like that, okay, and then I am going to put that with values, and so it'll print that out one line at a time as it reads it. Okay, and then I will take that out, and then I'll take that out. Okay, does that make sense? So line steps through file, which is log.txt, and it's going to look at file one line at a time. Now the word file is important because that has to match this, but the word line, you could call it whatever you wanted, and then whatever you used here, you would also use here. All right, now I'm going to take these printouts out here, okay, and then I'm going to print here, let's just say your data, like that. Okay, so now let's run this and see what happens. Okay, boom, look at that. Sensor reading, what do we get? We get an array. Okay, so this value gives us an array. And so let's come down here and play with it. So I'm just going to say values, values. So that is the last one that it was through the loop. And then I could say values of 1. And then what is that going to give me? That is going to give me 237.4 because the 0th element was 7.6, and the first element, the element in the 1 position, is 237.4. But you got to notice is it's still a string here, so you could do something like you could say, okay, what is float of values of 1, like that, and then boom, you get the number. Okay, so don't forget that these are strings, and you got to take the string 237.4 and you've got to convert it to the number 237.4. Okay, very good. So what can we do? We can write a file one line at a time, and we can read a file one line at a time. Okay, and so now what we got to think about, and let's just look over here at log. You see the log is very nicely formatted, one line at a time. So this would be line in the file, and this would be the next line in the file and the next line in the file. Okay, all right, let's close that. Now let's try to, I'm trying to show you simple to begin with so you kind of get the idea of how this works, but now let's go and let's get a little bit fancier. Okay, and so with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that what can you see is the problem here, that you can't just open as a write a line, close it, and then open it as a write, right, the line and then close it, because every time it would erase the data. And what I've just shown you here doesn't really work very well, because what you really want to do is not open and erase the file. You want to open the file and append to it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take all of these out, let's say, and then I'm just going to say that there is going to be a new data, like that, a new data. And let me make this, I'll just make it 5, I'll make it 6, and I'll make it 4.8. So now I have a log file. It has 3 lines in it, and I want to append a new line to that file without erasing the file. Okay, so now what we're going to do is also, as we're dealing with these files, like what if it was expecting to see something and something isn't there and your program's crashing? When you're doing these things, there's a lot of things you can do wrong. So we want to do a try here, and then all of this, what we're going to do is we're going to come up and we are going to indent the selected line. So we're going to say, try to do this, see if you can do it. Okay, and then we're going to come down here and we're going to say except, and that means if it didn't work, if something didn't work, I'm going to say tell me the OS error as error. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print that you had an error, and it's going to say error appending to file. And then what you want to know is you want to know what that error was so that you can debug it. And so I'm going to print it as E. So if it works, great. If it doesn't work, it's going to come down here. Okay, now, what is wrong with our code as we have presently written it? Well, if we open it as write, it is going to erase all of our existing data. We don't want to erase all of our existing data. We want to append our write, an A, we want to append it to the existing file. Now, we're not stepping through things, right? So we're not going to do a for loop. But what we are going to do is we are going to say, okay, the line is going to be equal to it's open. And so what we want to do is we want to join the data. Okay, so line is going to be a dot join of what? New data. So I have a new line of data, just like we did before. I want to join those elements together, and I create one string instead of an array of string, comma, string, comma, string, just like we did before. So now I have created my line, and now what am I going to do? I am going to file.write my line. And so this should take the existing file, it should open it for the purpose of appending so it doesn't erase the old data, and now I'm just adding one line. And so if you read sensor data, you would then just append the sensor data to the old file, and so you would just append, append, append. So you would open, append, open, append, open, append, and you wouldn't be doing for loops then. Okay, I'm hoping that that makes sense to you. All right, so now let's run this thing and see what happens. Oh, line 5, what did I do in line 5? Line is equal to comma dot join. That needs to be tabbed under the file open. Okay, so let's see, line 2. And remember, all this nonsense we're not doing because what? We have one new data point and we're appending it. All right, let's go. Okay, look at that. Your data, sensor reading, I have the array of data. Okay, I have the array of data. I have the array of data. And why? Because I split the string into an array. Now, if we look at log.txt, you see it is the 3 original strings and the one that we appended, and then we read that string, and as we read that string, then what we do is we split it back into an array. Now, you can go back and watch this again more carefully, but you can write a string and read a string, or you can write an array, read it as an array, and then join it together. There's a lot of different things using split and join, but you just got to kind of keep track of what you have and then make sure that you're doing the right thing. And so let's see, that looks pretty good. So what have we learned? We've learned how to open a file and write a data line to it. We've learned how to open a file and read a line from it. We've learned how to open a file and write lots of data, and then open the file and read lots of data. And then we've learned how to open an existing file and append a data point to it. Okay, guys, this has been, hopefully this wasn't too painful, and go back and watch it again. I hope I was explaining, why we were doing the dot joins and why we were doing the dot splits. All right, it's just going from strings to arrays or arrays to strings. And so play around with it. I think it also helps quite a bit if you keep looking at the data file, so you can see I wrote nice strings in there, and then I read the strings in as arrays. Okay, how did I read them as arrays? Well, I read them as arrays by splitting the string into an array of the individual components. Okay, guys, I hope this was a fun little lesson. So I think I'll give you a homework assignment. Just play around a little bit with maybe your first attempt at logging data from the GPS, where you maybe are collecting points, and then you are taking those points and you are creating a log file, which I think you would want to do like lat.lon, or maybe you would want to do lat, lon, or maybe you would want to do lat, lon, velocity, heading if you wanted more data. But just go in there with your GPS program and see if you can create just kind of a simple little logging program. I'm going to let you do that on your own. And then next week, the lesson that I'm going to do is I'm going to take what we've done here, and I'm now going to show you a program that you can write in Python in Thonny on your PC that will go out to the Pico W and will pull that file in. Because it's great that we have the data, but what we do with that data, we're going to want to probably do in the PC. And so this is a little bit of a tricky thing. How do you get a log file on the Pico W? How do you get it into your desktop PC, where you could go in and think about doing stuff with that data? Maybe you would want to map it, or there's all types of cool things that we can do, but we're going to need it back on the PC. And so I'll show you how to do that next week. And then week after next, we're going to go in and see if we can actually take our GPS project, and if we can hit a button, click a button to start logging and then click a button to stop logging, then we'll be able to come back home, connect it to the PC, and get that file in our PC where we can kind of show our track of where we've been. Does that sound good? I hope you're having fun with this. I'm having a lot of fun making these lessons. This was kind of a fun lesson today. Just, I think hopefully pretty quick and pretty easy, but yet very powerful, because now you are the master of data logging on the Raspberry Pi Pico W. Okay, guys. It's at this point that I always give a shout out to my Patreons. I really want to thank you guys for standing with me financially. Without your support, I would not be able to continue to produce quality, fresh, in-depth content every single week. So big thank you to you guys. You can also help this video by giving it a thumbs up and leaving a comment down below. That'll help me with the old YouTube juice. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. When you do, ring that bell so you'll get notification when future lessons drop. And most importantly, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people doing engineering and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will see you guys next week.